How did you mess with computers at school? Story 1. My high school had a program on all the computers that would allow the teachers to watch an entire classroom screens, take control of them, send content to them, etc. A friend of mine came up with an idea to try to use it to prank the classroom, being the I am very smart 16-year-olds we were. So when my teacher wasn't looking, I put a USB stick into her computer and copied her spyprogram.exe directory onto it to take a look at what was different between the teacher and student versions. Turns out, all you need to make the student version a teacher version was a 25-character license key that was in a plain text file. So obviously I copied it and upgraded my client to a controller using all of my teacher's settings. We then proceeded to rickroll the classroom on full volume from 34 computers. It was pretty great. At the end of the class, we came up with a great idea. What would happen if we took control of our teacher's computer and messed with her? So we connected to her computer, but she had been watching our screen from her screen. So for about 5 seconds, we see a bottomless pit of our screen and her screen mirrors over and over and over. After about 5 seconds, our PC fans got super loud and then shut off. When we tried to turn it back on, it was a black screen with only a flashing underscore in the top left corner. That PC had to be re-imaged by district tech support. Still not sure what caused that. It sounds like there wasn't any permanent damage to that computer, so there's that. The question is, what happened to you I am very smart 16-year-olds? Did you get suspended? Were you let off with a warning? Have you tried doing any more computer control experiences since then? I think there's a big follow-up here we're missing. Story 2. I managed to install Linux on almost 90% of all computers at the school all at once. There were several flaws in the network that were discovered over the years that let me essentially ruin, to the IT department at least, over 110 of their machines. Firstly, since these were mostly Macs, I was able to abuse their poorly configured guest account system to gain screen sharing access to any Mac that was currently logged in, regardless of the account that was currently in use. Second, the IT department set up some sort of program that would read a script file, then update the Macs according to the file via single user mode, I think. I modified one of the update scripts to point to a Linux image instead of an OS X update. I can't remember what I did, but I think there were specially modified images that will install a default system state silently, requiring no user input other than the parameters for the disk partition when being run in the command line. That somehow worked. So essentially, the next scheduled update completely ruined the school by installing an OS that nobody knew how to use. It was glorious, and apparently it was cheaper to toss the Macs and buy new ones than to pay the IT department to actually reinstall OS X by hand. Whatever, I got a ton of free Macs that day. Unexpectedly good outcome. This kid is actually very smart. What a windfall! What did this kid do with all those computers? It sounds like he could make more money by reinstalling OS X himself and selling them off. Maybe start up his own little LAN network at his house. Endless possibilities. How did he get all those computers? The school could have probably saved some money by offering to pay just him to reinstall all the operating systems on the computers. I think he would have taken that deal. Story 3. In 2001, I think, friends and I installed StarCraft deep in my high school's file network, accessible on every computer in the building, and we had it programmed to run without a disk. You would still need a CD key to play, but hacked or false CD keys were easy back in the day. We passed out false CD keys to those who knew to ask us, and since it was all on the shared network, you could LAN from basically anywhere in the building. This was right around the time when computers were becoming really prevalent in schools. Not just with computer labs, but many classes now had multiple computers, or were specifically just on computers. So we'd end up organizing these pretty large StarCraft battles across the school. Even got to the point where, in drafting class, where the teacher absolutely didn't care what we were doing, 2 friends and I, huge nerds if that wasn't obvious, would play some of the jocks in the class who loved StarCraft. We didn't just break into the system to have fun. We also broke down barriers to make life better. We had to get to the 3rd story to have a story about games? That's pretty cool. It does sound like they were reaching to different types of people to bring them together under this game. I miss StarCraft. Wish I could jump on a network and play a game now. Story 4. My school district used Macs pretty much everywhere. A couple of the most common pranks. There was a key combination that would invert all the colors on the screen. If I recall correctly, it was all the meta keys and 8. It was a lot of fun to do this to someone who left their computer unattended and didn't know that. One of the function keys, I think F11, would move all the windows to the outside edge of the screen, showing the desktop. Pushing it again moved them back, but there was an animation associated with both of those movements. If you held Shift while tapping F11, it would do the same thing, but with the animation slowed down. The thing is, it didn't matter if the animation had completed or not. The machine would queue up another action for each time you hit F11, but wouldn't cancel the animation in progress. So if you were quick enough, or someone wasn't paying attention, talking to their neighbor, looking at a book, etc., you could lean over, spam Shift plus F11 a dozen times, and effectively force them to watch all their windows slide in and out at a snail's pace for a minute or two. Story 5. We pretty much ran the network. It was up or down at our whim. The entire network used hubs, and this was right as routers were becoming a thing, so they were not yet economical. We would shut down the entire network with a repeating ping command in DOS set to max packet size. It was far too simple. We wouldn't usually do it for long, just enough for everyone to think it was a hiccup, and to see if we could. Our computer class was actually really awesome. The assigned modules were easy, and once we were finished, our teacher would let us do our own thing. Turns out, our school had an entire computer graveyard. We would go in there, find parts, and build entire computers. Eventually, we had a separate network of 8 or 10 machines that we used exclusively for Quake 2 and the original Halo. One day, the school came in and removed our separate gaming computers. We were ticked. The network was down for quite a while. I feel bad for these kids. I think the school was short-sighted for not recognizing what these kids did. They managed to build an entire series of computers for gaming? The school should have recognized what kind of talent they had right under their nose. Those kids should have gotten jobs. They should have at least been able to keep their computer network. Hopefully they learned how to build one on their own. Story 6. My friend and I entered into the operating system itself a virus that would essentially hunt through email accounts with edu addresses, so all the teachers and administration, and display a picture of 2 women having spicy time. If the operator clicked more than or equal to 20 times, a video started. If the operator clicked more than 20 times, the noise started. The only way to get rid of it was pretty simple. Control-Alt-Delete and use the taskbar to shut it down. Not that complex, obviously. Although, to be honest, I didn't do a lot of programming. I did some of the basics. However, I mostly did the strategic planning of how we were actually going to get it done and implement it. My friend's dad was a programmer and hobbyist hacker, so he actually helped my friend design it. I still find it hilarious that his dad was willing to mess with the teachers. He must have really hated our school. However, most teachers didn't know that. They didn't know who did it, but it was hilarious. Story 7. So, computer class for most of grade school was nothing more than endless typing classes. She sells seashells by the seashore and other tongue twisters to get us practicing home rows and typing quickly. Absolutely mind-numbingly dull. Sure, getting to play Commander Keen or Wolfenstein after was nice, but the reward was nowhere near worth the effort to reach it, and the teachers would constantly get frustrated with me ditching home rows and finishing faster and accurately without them. So one day, with us both being frustrated with each other, I restarted the computer and opened the BIOS setup utility and started changing random settings to random values. Child me was vindictive. Story 8. Finally, I can contribute. I was in college, in a classroom, waiting my turn to an exam which was held in another room. Bored out of my mind, behind me was a PC. I saw a red button that said 220. I say aloud, "What does this button do?" and turn the button. The button now says 150. An a loud bang and smoke comes from inside the PC unit. I turned the power supply unit from 220 volts to 150 volts, which toasted it. The room was full with my colleagues. Everybody looks at me in disbelief. I began to laugh out loud, not believing what just happened. Luckily, nobody told on me to the professor, who was a difficult guy. Ooh, the curiosity killed the computer. I'm glad he didn't get in any trouble. Hopefully, the school had enough computer parts to be able to repair this thing. Maybe they should contact the 2 kids that built the entire Quake 2 gaming network. They could probably find some spare parts for it. Story 9. This probably shows my age, but we'd open BASIC and write a little program that went something like this. 10. Print, you suck. 20. Go to 10. Then we'd edit the shortcut to a popular program, say MS Word, to link to this program instead. When an unsuspecting user clicked to open what they thought was a legit program, instead, they'd be treated to the dot matrix printer screeching out, "You suck! You suck! You suck!" forever. Only way to stop it was to find and terminate the program. Powering down the printer and turning it back on again wouldn't do it. Story 10. My school had one of those annoying monitoring programs so the librarian could quickly see what you were doing and take control. And usually the jerk would just turn the computer off. Someone found out that when she started watching, a small square appeared in the top left corner of the screen. If you right-click this square, you could reverse the control and take her computer over. Someone took over and rather quickly hit delete on the Windows folder. It didn't work, but it helped stop the overbearing watchful eye of the jerky librarian. Story 11. Sorry in advance for mediocre English. It's my third language. I think it was in 2004. My IT teacher let me use an old laptop for a project. Inside it was a floppy disk with the username and password for all users on the learning platform we used, including teachers. The rest of the semester, I logged into the teachers' accounts, found the hand-ins from the best students, downloaded, made it my own, and handed it in from my own account. Never got busted, but I realized I used almost the same time altering assignments as I would have if I just made my own. Also had some fun with the Let Me Rule Trojan from time to time. I'm gonna have to look up what that Let Me Rule Trojan does. If he got away with using it, it doesn't sound like it was that destructive. Did this guy really waste time by hacking into other person's computers and taking their work and using it as his own? Or does that show he's actually using the knowledge he's learning in computer class? I think if he's learning about computers and using them to get into other people's work, I say that counts as experience. Story 12. Somebody threw a Molotov cocktail into the window of a computer lab at my school. It was over a weekend, so thankfully nobody was there. But it destroyed all of the computers in the room. My friend and I got blamed for it because the teacher whose lab it was thought we didn't like her, which we didn't. Thankfully, our alibi was that we were on a plane flying back from a school exchange trip to Belgium when the damage occurred. There were several teachers on the flight to corroborate our story. That and, plane tickets. Story 13. Not me, but some guy has been updating a games folder on the school's public H drive. None of the teachers or tech support guys can get rid of it or set it up so we can use it. No one knows where it came from, except it's been there since forever. It has Counter-Strike 1.6, Day of Defeat, Halo CE, a Halo ODST emulator. It actually works. I too have questions. Roller Coaster Tycoon, Team Fortress Classic, Doom, Knights of the Old Republic, Minecraft, Old School RuneScape, Elder Scrolls Morrowind, and a few others. Story 14. Soundboards. Holy hell, we were little demons in middle school with those things. My personal favorites were either Arnold Schwarzenegger or Pulp Fiction. When the teacher would ask if there were any questions, from the back of the class you would hear in a thunderous voice, "Who is your daddy and what does he do?" followed by an eruption of laughter. Also following up anytime the teacher says, "That's correct," with "correctamundo." If you're reading this, Miss Jadish, I'm so sorry. That's really creative. I wish I could have responded with soundboards when I was in school. I guess I got to do that a little bit when I got into radio. It was fun to collect sounds from TV and movies and bring them in to use in our own broadcasts. Story 15. Our school network ran on Windows for Workgroups 3.0. Machines were locked down so you couldn't run your own programs on them. However, we discovered if you put a modified win.ini file that allowed you to install your own programs in a network drive that came before when the lockdown version was stored, it would use that, and you can install stuff. And that was my first introduction to Doom multiplayer. Story 16. Shift plus print screen to capture desktop. Open Paint. Control V. Rotate image upside down and save. Set image as desktop background. Auto hide taskbar. On desktop, right-click View, uncheck Show Desktop Icons. Laugh at random victims attempting to use computer. Story 17. Not me, but I remember at my old school someone managed to disable the H key on lots of the computers. If you were typing and trying to press H, you would get an error message saying like, Sorry, but the H key on this computer is currently disabled. Please try again later. That's very specific. That sounds like you gotta write a custom program to pull something off like that. Why the H key? What beef does this guy have with the letter H? That feels really random at best. Story 18. I never did anything to damage computers, just circumvent security measures. Using standalone browsers or games from a flash drive, using said browsers and/or proxies to get around web filters, installing programs or games into the C root directory since most group policy or other security measures wouldn't stop something from executing from there, etc. Story 19. When I was in the 12th grade, all of the computers ran Windows XP. Fellow classmates were crazy for Minecraft. One day in the computer lab during lunch, I saw an open computer. I walked over and opened the notepad and entered the code for deleting System 32. I then changed the icon to Minecraft, named it Minecraft.exe, and put it on the shared drive. The next day, about 22 computers became bricked. No one ever found out it was me. Story 20. Unplug the mouse from the back of computers 1 and 2. Switch the plugs, but leave the mice where they were. Mouse in front of computer 1 is now plugged into computer 2, and vice versa. Watch the hilarity ensue. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.